Hello and welcome to the DoneJS Contributors Meeting. Today is Friday, November 10th, 2017. My name is Jason Lahara, and today I'm celebrating Taylor Swift's new album because I'm a Swiftie. We've got some people on the core team and other Batovians with us today. You guys want to introduce yourselves?
I don't know if we have an order, but I'm Justin Meyer. I also like to Tay Sway.
Woohoo!
Matthew, I don't like or dislike her. She's fine.
I'm Kevin. I thought we were all off Taylor Swift now. Isn't she bad now?
Not
let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on. All right, so we're gonna go through demos, and then we're going to talk about the results from our second survey, and then if we have some topics, we'll go through those too. I'm gonna get us started because I don't have a whole lot to demo. This past week, I mainly worked with people on the survey and followed up and that sort of thing. But between that, I also published this blog post, the October 2017 DoneJS community update. Kind of gave a brief overview of what we worked on since we started working on stuff from the last survey. So kind of mentioned our progress on different things and did a little bit of a demo of the debug stuff too. And then talked about our meetups. We've got DoneJS Boston, DoneJS LA, DoneJS Silicon Valley all at the end of this month, and then another DoneJS Chicago at the beginning of next month. And then thank you to everyone who contributed to all of our different projects. So if you haven't seen this, check it out. There's already a link in the forum post. And then I think I'm going to start doing these instead of monthly, do them every 6 weeks to kind of fall in sync with our 6-week product epochs or epics. Man, Justin, you've got me saying epochs now too. Okay, that's what I've got. Who would like to go next?
I can go next.
Cool.
Focus and volunteer.
Yeah.
I'm going to show a very boring example. No. So this is something that people have shown off before, this named inline partials. So in the newest versions of CanStash, we're trying to make everyone use kind of explicit scope lookups. So like this, looking up child explicitly and not doing scope walking because like next week in Stash 4.0, we're going to remove that. So if you try to look up something that's in a parent scope, it'll actually not work. So in this example, we're kind of rendering these. First, we render the person, and then we're going to render each person's child kind of recursively. So you can kind of see how this data is laid out and how it gets rendered in this kind of hierarchy. So the problem that Jason actually ran into last week is if somewhere inside of this partial, inside of here, you want to use something from your root view model. So say we want to use this exclaim property. If I run this, it'll work, but you get all of these warnings saying that exclaim is not in the current scope, and it's actually walking up the scope to find it from a parent scope. So to fix that for Earthworm Jim, we would have to do something like this, and then for Grey Worm, it would actually be like this, and then for My Doom, it would be like this. So there's actually no way to explicitly look this up, or at least there wasn't. Now there is. You can use scope to actually get the root of your scope and read a property from that. So now if I get rid of these, click run, it all works. No more scary warnings.
Woohoo!
That's it. That's it for me.
Yeah, that was super helpful. I ran into that when building the new sidebar for CanJS.com. That's all Can components with stash templates, and it's recursive. So I was using the new syntax. So thank you for adding that feature.
Sure.
Yeah. Who'd like to go next?
I can go, I think, if I can
Cool.
find my tab. All right, my demo is about some new documentation that I've been working on for Steele's website. There's 3 new docs that people might want to check out. So the idea, what I'm working towards is these new topics-based documentation. There's 3 new docs.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So let's see. Yeah. So the idea is that we have a bunch of topics and we have guides about those topics, and that's kind of where I want people to go in to look how to use Steel. When they have a question, they don't understand something, I want to use these guides. So I've been working on the development ones in the last week. Development bundles is brand new. The idea of these topics is that they're kind of high level. They explain the subject matter, give you a basic idea of the API, mostly just linking to the appropriate API docs there, and then kind of a small like how to use it section. So there's a development bundles one, using npm package. Again, this is very high level, just explains npm and like how it relates to Steel. And then hot module replacement is the better one. One of my dog is barking, so I'm gonna close my door. Hot module replacement is a cool one. And we didn't actually have a guide for live load or hot module replacement before at all. Now we do. So it explains API, then it gives you like a little example of taking the quick start guide and adding live reload, and like, oh no, it actually now you render twice, and then it shows you how to fix it by actually using the reload module to remove the previous stuff that you inserted. Anyways, yeah, I'm working on all of these for the next week or so, and then move on to other stuff. But just wanted to show this off. Oh yeah, by the way, Justin, the things line up now. Hopefully that makes you happy.
Do you want to hide them until you mouse over them?
I don't know. I think they're okay not being hidden.
Yeah, they're more accessible if they're not hidden. You can see that functionality is there. Yeah. But those docs are awesome, Matthew.
GitHub hides them. Webpack docs do not hide them. I don't know. Anyways.
The docs are awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, who'd like to go next?
I can go next.
All right.
Let me share my screen. Okay, so Julian actually reported an issue with can auto render. Actually, Kevin wrote up the issue, but initially Julian reported it. So there was a problem with attribute encoding. So this is the demo that Julian made for us, and this is it running in a browser. So what should happen is foo is bar, bar is bar, and then reference should also print out bar. And we shouldn't be getting this warning that scope.vars.foo is not working right. So this is actually
a huge screen. Would you mind bumping up the text size for everything that you show off, please?
Yeah, I always forget about that. How's that look?
Yeah, better. Thank you.
Okay, and then, that good?
That's better.
Okay, so this actually isn't a bug so much as it's a limitation of the DOM. So he's using CanView auto render with a div. So these are actually just normal DOM attribute names. And when they're inserted, this will actually automatically be lowercase. So the DOM is actually kind of breaking this. But what you can do is use a script tag instead, which is kind of what the docs point you towards. And then we'll get exactly what we expect. Foo is bar, bar is bar, and reference is bar, and no warning. So today I'm going to be updating the docs to explain that this is a limitation of using CanView auto render with regular HTML elements other than the script tag.
There's another way to fix it too.
What's the other way?
Code it yourself.
Escape it yourself.
Oh
that's
yeah.
That's actually what Julian did when he ran into this. He escaped it or encoded it all himself. But well, we've talked about this, but I still think we need a more for just camelcase. It would be good if we had like a more human version of camelcase escaping. Like if you push CM : at the front of your thing or something, and then you could use dashes and it would automatically camelcase. I don't know. It would be, it's not a high priority thing for us to do, but. So yeah, the attribute encoding isn't specified. We could change that without a breaking change. So if somebody wants to put in a pull request for that, that's cool.
Why do we need to have the attributes in the DOM anyways? Why can't you put them in DOM data or something like that, that information?
Well, I mean, we could eventually put them in there, but we support right now the ability to wrap like a binding expression in like a if this then else kind of with stash, which will add and remove the binding when appropriate. So if we want to support being able to do kind of languagey things with stash and the binding syntax at the same time, there's other ways we could do it, but the easiest way is to treat the DOM as kind of like your surface, if you will, your kind of state. So that's why we do it that way.
We talked about putting the attribute and the attribute value in two separate attribute values, if that makes sense. But I don't know, it ends up doubling all of the attributes you use, and it looks really ugly.
Yeah, I mean, this is worth a topic, like a whole like sidebar.
Yes. The reason. Oh, go ahead.
It's an interesting. I just think it's an interesting problem in general. Is the difference between HTML and the DOM, and that HTML isn't case sensitive. It really makes it so like web components is in some ways like a really big issue, and very hard to tackle because how every language, every template engine, React, Angular, everybody, they have a way of like putting out HTML and sending normal JavaScript objects to it. But they all have a very different approach of doing it that is incompatible because the HTML doesn't really provide you a surface for that. You have to do it in JavaScript. You can't really do it in HTML. So I don't know. It's a big problem for compatibility.
All right, let's go to our next demo. Chris, do you want to go?
Yeah, my demo is probably going to be the most boring, so just be warned, I guess.
I bet you can make it exciting. I believe in you.
Wow, you have more faith in me than me. So I made a presentation. There's not going to be a lot of code. Everyone can see my screen, I hope.
Nope.
No?
Nope.
It says I'm presenting everyone.
You're presenting yourself right now.
All right. But no. Yeah. All right. Here we go. You see now?
Yep.
All right, cool. So I made a presentation. I'm not going to show any code, but basically the last 2 weeks I've been working on mutation events. And I'd kind of like to give a high-level overview of what is actually going on. Mutation events, where are they used? You'll see them inserted, removed attribute events. That's really where they come into play. And they're used all over CanJS in different packages in different ways. The most public-facing is probably in CanComponent because you can use the inserted and removed events for lifecycle hooks, where you can bind things and then tear them down. So they're used all over the place. They're really important to a lot of what we do, especially considering memory safety. But I don't know personally how familiar everyone is with them, so I wanted to put some use cases up. So the underlying technology for these events is the Mutation Observer API that's available in most web browsers. We do have a polyfill that we use alongside the API because IE historically has really bad support. I drew that box to really emphasize that. But also we do the server-side rendering on Node and CanSimpleDom and even JSDOM, which is way heavier, doesn't have mutation observers, and it's just like an open issue for JSDOM to eventually integrate that. But until then, there's no really good solution to mutation observers on Node, so we need to account for both, even if we didn't support IE or all the other places that don't support mutation observer. But that's the underlying technology that drives these events. So our implementation, like I said, we have two systems, the mutation observer and then the polyfill. The polyfill, you can think of it as just really an intermediate function call with an if statement in it that says if there's a mutation observer, then just call the particular method directly on the DOM node, and that's it. But if the mutation observer doesn't exist, then send out a fake mutation event to the shared manager that will dispatch those events to the DOM. And the manager is also in charge of its own mutation observer stuff. So we have two components. What this means in practice is that when you're developing a CanJS package and you want if you want consistent support for the mutation events, you have to make all of your calls to node or element for particularly append child, remove child, insert before, replace child, and set attribute. For those methods, you have to go through some central API so that those methods, their effects are recorded and sent out as mutations. So that's kind of what's happening under the hood of all of this. And then, of course, finally, you get the DOM events on the appropriate targets, as the mutations happen. Where am I now? Oh, wait, no, I skipped a slide. Hold on. Okay, so there are problems with our current way of doing things. There are some related to performance, some are about testing. For the polyfill, the biggest concern is we are running that if statement to check for the mutation observer on every call to the polyfill methods, which we really don't need to do, right? Because the mutation observer...
we do because we allow, mostly it's around to support our testing.
I know. I know, but I'm saying on the outset, it's like, why do we have to do this every time? Because I'll get into the solutions later. But so we're doing this check every time, and it's not performant because the mutation observer in a real application doesn't swap around or get removed or added during the lifetime of an app, usually. Another problem is ordering. We have a lot of tests. I'm going through them right now, where it's really hard to tell when a mutation happened, and there's timing issues related to that. And there's not really a good API right now for making sure all these things happen in the right time. We have little utilities, test helpers, but no concrete, reliable API. And probably the biggest problem is we're using DOM events. These particular DOM events are non-standard, so you can't leave CanJS and find them anywhere else. They also conflict with other libraries. I'm not saying that they can conflict with any existing that I know of, but they potentially can because the DOM events are just dispatched. Anyone could be listening to anything. Some events have odd semantics. The most important point, though, is the DOM events are slower than regular function calls. You have to deal with the whole system of dispatching just to get what is essentially just callbacks to work. So we're going through this DOM event system, and it's really slow. To show how slow, I found a benchmark. So the shorter ones here are just using the DOM event system. You can see direct usage and jQuery. And then we have this EE. This is an pure JS event emitter library. So it's not interacting with the DOM at all. And you can see it's just a lot faster, way faster than just using DOM events.
Wonder if you turn bubbling off. I'm assuming bubbling is the cause of the difference there. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I don't know. I tried to get this presentation together, and I found this was the closest JS perf to demonstrating the problem with the event system. But yeah, so it's a lot faster just to use plain functions. So this kind of leads into what I've been working on the past 2 weeks, CanDom mutate, which basically tries to tackle a lot of these problems by introducing a new API for dealing with them. So the polyfill, instead of checking every time, we only check for the mutation observer when it's actually changed. This wasn't always possible because we didn't have CAN globals, but now that we do, we can efficiently swap out the polyfill as needed. So there's no wasted checks, because instead of having the if statement, we have two separate types of polyfill. One that's basically a no-op that doesn't do anything special for mutation observers. And then the other one that is fully featured and will replicate the mutation observer stuff. And we're swapping in between those completely. So there's no conditional logic per call. So that's a lot better. Ordering, we have inside the API, you can have callbacks for particular mutation events. So it's a lot easier to just say, okay, after this series of mutations, then we can do so-and-so checks in our tests. And then DOM events, we just don't use them anymore because we can just use pure functions with CanDom mutate. So the roadmap for all this it's in an issue, but basically what I'm working on right now is getting 3.0 compatibility for the existing DOM mutation events, and that work will go into CanUtil. But for 4.0, I'd like to see us using CanDom mutate directly in packages, so we can skip the DOM event system entirely for internal stuff, and then we expose custom events in a new library or new package that people can leverage to get similar 3.0 behavior if they really wanted it in 4.0. So yeah, I'm probably way over time, but that's my progress for the last 2 weeks.
Awesome.
Cool. Thanks for sharing that with us, Chris.
Yep.
Okay. Do we have any other demos before we move to talking about the survey results?
Yeah, I have a real quick one.
Yep.
Just want to talk through some of the changes I made to get Can Connect to work. Additions to Can Reflect. So let's say I have a type person with a name and a string. I've added a Can Reflect define instance. This is because instances of person are sealed by default, so we need a way kind of on the type to be able to add expando functionality, because Can Connect to support is saving and is destroyed. It adds to types. We need like kind of an internal underscore saving and destroyed property that aren't really enumerable. So this define instance key allows you to define. Right now, it only supports enumerable fault value get and set, kind of the things that you would normally have on an object defined property. So there's that, and then I made can map and can define work with this. And then what you could do, this already existed, but I just wanted to show it. You don't need to you could just use the new keyword, but like just showing how Can Reflect kind of mimics the reflect API of the browser. There's a way you can call new to instantiate an instance of person with arguments. That creates a person instance. And then the next thing I added is to deal with the store, we need to know when an instance is bound or not. And we can't really know. The problem is there's like weird memory leak stuff here. If we bound to instance to know when it was bound, well, then we're essentially kind of creating a connection to that instance, and instance itself can never get cleaned up. Because we would never unbind the binding on instance specifically to know when it's unbound. So what you really need to be able to do is listen to something outside of instance that instance will dispatch on. Well, that's its type. So we can use canReflect to say, hey, when any types can implement this reflection, essentially saying, hey, when any instance is bound, when its bound status changes, call this. So this will call with the instance, which is this, and whether it's bound. So if we were to do an onKey value here after this on the instance's age property, instance would become bound here, and we would know to keep person in the store, for instance, for CanConnect. Okay. Then, of course, you don't need to bind this. You don't need to bind through canReflect. You can just bind the old-fashioned way, instance.on, and that works as well. I'm just showing that you can. One other thing that I'm doing on the side is creating test suites that just use canReflect so that you could presumably implement any map type, because now we're probably going to have 3 or 4 different map types. The old CanMap, the new CanObserve. We have this other kind of simple map that we use a lot of places. I might make test suites that kind of look like this, that just feature detect your map types. Then the final thing is there's a weird or not weird thing. Like at some point, things can change their IDs in maps can change their ID property. Like if you have a to-do, it could have no ID, and then you would set it to ID 5 after it was saved. We need to do things whether or not the item is really in the store or not, whether it's bound or not, if some changes happen on certain instances. So what we've added also now is a on-instance bound change that types can implement. Now this is something you don't want to do very often. It's more or less okay for maps because basically every single event is always going to kind of run and call. Oh wait, I pasted the wrong thing. Sorry. Whoops. On-instance patches. What this does is say, hey, anytime an instance changes at all, any person instance, call back this function. So we could see if the ID changed. Again, this is expensive call. Like if you add this is kind of like almost if you think of it like a mutation observer kind of thing. Like when you do subtree true. If by doing this you change how these types are going to act, and they're going to start dispatching things a little bit more aggressively. So you will slow certain changes up, but that's okay if you're kind of limiting it to just one map type, hopefully. And CanJS was doing this anyways, just in kind of a more hacky way in the past. So anyways, if I were to change a property on the instance, change its age to 36, that would send back the instance and the patches. I would say if the set key was age, the value is 36. The other thing that you might notice that you might have not seen before is we had this old onChange event. We're mostly getting rid of that, and we're going to start supporting patches. So if you mutate one of our types, they will produce these standard patches types. So if you want to listen to like when anything changes, there's going to be an on patches that you can listen to on a specific instance, or an on instance patches you can listen to when anything changes given the type. So that's it for me.
I had a quick question. The canReflect define instance key, is that actually using like what parts of, why is it in canReflect, I guess is my question.
Well, because it needs to work on both CanMap and CanDefine and other map types.
Okay.
Are you asking why we don't do it on the instance?
No, I just mean like why isn't that a separate package like CanDefine instance key or something? If it's not actually reflected. I don't know. Maybe I'll take a look at the code and maybe I'll understand better.
I mean, the distinction of where I kind of tend to put reflect versus non-reflect things is it stateful? If it is, I don't want it in can reflect, but if it's not, and it's basically just, it's mostly just a pattern to look up symbols here and call them, then it can go in can reflect.
Quick question also. What's a good use case for can reflect new instead of the new operator? What's like a example of using that?
There really isn't. Well, I mean, you could use the normal reflect new, which is there's some, it's kind of hard to call, like, let's say I wanted to call new of person, but I wanted to give it arbitrary arguments. Let's just say I had like an array of A, B, and C. Like, how can I call person with A, B, and C? New person with A, B, and C.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
Right? It's kind of tricky to do that. That's why the Reflect API allows, the JavaScript Reflect API allows you to do that kind of thing. And that's why, you know, we have it too. I really...
That's not really tricky with the spread operator, but yeah.
Sure. The spread, yeah, but does the spread operator use reflect underneath when they do it?
No, I think
they probably do the hacky way. I think we talked about this once. I
think it breaks down using call or something, or I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I don't know how it does.
Well, that would be weird too, because how can it know how many items the array has? There's a ways you can do it by, like, you know, object create person prototype. Then you just call person. You can person apply with your person created, but that's the way that I did it in the long ago, in the before time.
In the before time. Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
Cool. That's it for me.
Cool. Thank you, Justin. Any more demos?
Oh yeah, I guess I have one. I put this as a topic, but I can do it as a demo.
Sweet. Thanks.
So we released DoneJS 1.1 last week. This current week? Yes, it's this week. I was just there. The big feature of the new version of DoneJS 1.1, is DoneSSR 1.3. DoneSSR 1.3 contains the new zones-based API. With the new zone-based API allows you to, like, all the internal stuff that DoneSSR does is now implemented as these various zone plugins. So you kind of use CanZone, use these various plugins, plug them together, and, you know, do server rendering without having to use, like, the base DoneSSR API, which is what we use for DoneJS apps. So along with that, I created a guide called Server Rendering with React. So the reason for this guide is it lets you, like, you know, in traditional React application, not using any of DoneJS's tools, like not using generators or Steel for that matter, just a basic React application that you then use DoneSSR's zones to do server rendering. So it walks you through doing, like, basic server rendering, which is what you get by default, you know, with DoneSSR. Wait for everything to finish and then return the HTML. That's what this is about. Then it walks through setting up an HTTP2 server and tells you how to do that using DoneJS Speedy. And then updating that server to use push mutations, which is what we also call incremental rendering. So yeah, it walks you through all of this. It's a pretty cool demo. And then at the end of it, you get this little updating list as incremental rendering happens, which is cool. Using, I think the app uses CanIndy JSON stream to fetch, like, an API, to stream in an API result. And you get that on the server, or excuse me, you get that with incremental rendering as well. So check out this new guide if, like, you just want to learn about how to use these internal parts of DoneSSR in your own application, so you don't have to use everything. Necessarily, you don't have to use everything that you use in the normal DoneJS app. That is it.
Sweet.
So the package is called Speedy, but it's HTTP2?
Yeah, so yeah, it's The Speedy basically is HTTP2. Like the HTTP2 is kind of an evolution of the idea of Speedy. So the person who created that particular module supports HTTP 1.1, Speedy, and H2.
Oh, okay.
But now H2 is actually in the newest version of Node, I believe. So I want to.
It is.
DoneSSR doesn't currently support that one, so we need to update that.
Okay, gotcha.
Cool. Thank you, Matthew. Justin, do you want to get us started with talking about the results from our last survey?
I would. Let's check them out. All right, so here's the rankings. Let's go through it. We probably should put the number of votes just so it the distance between some of these, is a little bit more obvious then. Adding a routing guide and working with forms were like the strong number one, like kind of tied for number one, I believe. Then I would say the next two are kind of like also high-ish up there. And then these were all kind of like towards the, well, I guess we put these both as 4s, but I thought this one was a little bit higher. Like, I don't remember where the break was. I thought the break was more like these 4 and then everything else, but
no,
are these really tied?
No, so the 4s were actually tied, and I think the break was really 1, 2, and 3 were pretty.
Yeah, these were way higher.
Yeah, closer, and then 4 and below were kind of trailing.
So yeah, those are, and I think what we're going to take on we're going to take definitely on 1 and 2 of for these. This is going to be kind of what we did for CanSet for the last one. Like, we want to do this, but I think we're going to do it next epoch. DoneJS improved live reload performance. I don't know if Chase and you actually want to talk about that one, because my guess is that people didn't actually know what they were voting for with that, or like I wasn't sure what they were voting for because there was so much like tied up with this.
Yeah, so I've been talking to a bunch of people who voted for that, and I'd say maybe half or 2/3 of the feedback has been, yeah, actually live reload is not performant in a bunch of these situations. And the rest of the feedback is live reload is broken in these sorts of ways.
Yeah, I took it to mean it was like one of the 3 things. Live reload performance was bad, or live reload has some bugs, or that just when you reload the page, you want it to be faster.
Yeah, people, I've gotten feedback about reloading the page and wanting that to be faster, but it's minimal compared to actual live reload performance and live reload bugs.
Yeah. The other ones that were high, SSR tips and tricks guide, improvements to debugging zone issues. So this one is the one that we're because we're a little fuzzy on this one, and we wanted to collect kind of more cases where this is wrong. This one, we're going to start collecting what's happening. We're going to take this one on though immediately because we know what to do there. So for this one, if you do experience live reload performance issues, please report it. If you can give us a sample of your app and what you're doing, and then when the performance was bad, or you found bugs, please report that. And we want to fix it. This might just be one, again, that we kind of have to give it a few weeks till we get enough knowledge around where things are going wrong to kind of take on a few performance issues all at once. SSR tips and tricks, that I don't know what we decided there. I think we just decided we're going to wait on that one. This one was, these were tied. So it's really, we're doing this and then the next one. We're wanting issues for this, things to come up. We're taking this one on. This one we'll wait on. Everything else was a lot lower. For Steel.js, sounds like we're going to do a spike to figure out what it's going to take to do tree shaking. And then this one is on deck as well. So we've got a few things to finish up. So like I'll share this little to-do list that we put together for our high list. So we still have some things to finish up the docs updates. We want to get 4.0 out and upgrade our example apps to work in 4.0, and then finish making the debugger guide and the CanDom mutate stuff. Then we're going to finish the can set in this epoch from last epoch. Then the stuff that we really want to be able to do are these 6 things we're going to try to finish off in this epoch as well. These are kind of like weak points that we slowly got to like 9. So yeah, that's it. That's what we're going to do. Any thoughts, questions about that? Cool. Well, I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm really actually, well, to be honest, I'm mostly excited about getting done the epoch stuff that we started this previous time. I really want the debugging stuff. Manuel, if you're watching this, you should give more demos. That stuff is really cool, and I think it's going to make a big difference for people who are using CanJS to be able to kind of just see how your app is all connected. Very excited for that. And then for this one, I'm excited that I'm taking another stab at the can set stuff. It's confusing for everybody. It's a big sore spot that we'll clean up. And then having guides, I think that's something that Vue has done really well, is like they don't actually have docs so much as I feel like as they have guides. And I think those are really useful. And I think maybe we should be putting more emphasis on that. Less emphasis on the guide, on the docs. I mean, still good to have docs to be specific around like, but people like stories, right? They follow stories. They don't just be like, I'm going to look at API docs and absorb it like a computer. At least not normal people.
Yeah, I think the API docs are more focused on contributors, right? All of our contributors need those docs. But you're right, for users, they're probably not as important as we.
I think it depends on what you're doing and how experienced you are. Like I can go to a React or Angular API documentation, and that's all I need for the most part, right? Or maybe like a very quick tutorial for like the basics. And then, once you've built something before, you really just need like the flavor of it. I don't need like a walkthrough and whatnot. But most people haven't actually probably built an app before. I mean, that's the really curious thing about it, is most users, this is probably like their first application they've ever built.
Yeah, it's crazy,
right? So it's just crazy. But that's why I think guides are so useful for them. It's much more approachable. It's linear. It's story. I don't know. So I think it's good that it's good that those were voted on. I think next time I was also wanting to make like a how it works kind of guides, like just how understanding kind of CanJS from the like top down or bottom up. One thing I've always wanted to do, and this is getting way off topic to even start talking about ideas for next one, which is just like, but that's good because then people should start coming up with them. I've always wanted like a way of like picturing our stack. Like we kind of have one on the DoneJS.com page. Being way off into the weeds now, but I don't care. This is where we can talk about stuff like this. Where is it? APIs. So we have something like this a little bit for DoneJS, but it really doesn't go like, there's not much there, right? It's not like a mental model that people can reuse throughout, their understanding of DoneJS. I don't know. I've always wanted like a picture that people could paint in their heads. Maybe the stuff that Manuel is doing would allow us kind of like help us ease into one, because we could frame it ourselves. You know, I thought it'd be really cool to have, like, I don't know, it's probably impossible, but a dream would be like you could have your DOM as like the starting point of your app, and then you could see those kind of connections that we all saw earlier. You know, if you didn't watch what Manuel did earlier, then you don't know what I'm going to be talking about. But like a really cool idea would be to like have your DOM, and then you could see the whole flow from your actual, like almost like you were inspecting the page. You know, you had your little DOM on the left, and you could see how the whole thing flow through different parts of your app. I don't know. Just like, where does the routing fix sit, or where, you know, your models are kind of down here, but they're connected to CanDefine, and CanDefine is also kind of part of, like, you know, you can see that your CanDefine is making your model and your view model, and then there's these other layers. I don't know, just to break it all down and then like explain what each piece is doing, I think would be really useful to do. And then, oh, I know where I got this idea. If anybody's played Breath of the Wild, they have this really cool way of letting you know when you're in these dungeons where you are. And it would be cool if you went to like CanJS.com and you're like, oh, I'm on the API docs. And you know, we have a little bit of this because we have observables now. But like you clicked on CanDefine, and that like bigger map that you know, like your little area is highlighted. I don't know. Anyways, random thoughts. Anybody else have some random thoughts they want to share? Since we have like 9 more minutes.
Yeah, I don't think anyone had any topics for us to discuss after.
Well, we need to discuss my Steel PR that removes that. Well, doesn't remove. It moves the module loaded twice warning to like more verbose log level. So you have to change the log level to see that. Justin wanted to talk about it. So Justin, what do you want to talk about?
So that worries me, because then I don't think people will see it. Like I said, the reason why that was so important is I spent an hour trying to figure out what the heck was going wrong in an application, because 2 versions of, like, I forgot what it was, some part in CanJS. Something in CanJS was loaded twice, and that was causing all sorts of havoc. The cases where it's the appropriate thing, I think, are like rarely things that users are doing. It's things that we're doing for users, and then we can always, is it not? I guess.
Yeah, like, so one common case is that this is found by a user actually. Is they import they import their package JSON because they use their package JSON's metadata for something. So that causes the warning because we use the package.json is also loaded for configuration of Steel.
Yeah, to me, I mean, it's just it comes down to like the warning. Like the warning is obnoxious, and it's not easily gotten rid of. Or there's a horrible bug that could take someone who's not intimately familiar with the tools and like how to discover this problem day or 2 to figure out. And I don't know how, like, what the appropriate way of balancing those are. To put it under a debug mode that nobody is going to turn on feels like then they're never going to. The people who are having this problem are never going to make use of it. It's like I don't know if people ever actually escalate their warning levels.
That's documentation problem. Then we need to have better docs in Steel. It's like, hey, you know, how do I figure this out? Well, up the log level. I think it's. Yeah. I think having like, that's the problem with this. This is a Band-Aid on like a more internal problem of Steel. In that it is possible for you to make this mistake. It should not be possible for you to make this mistake, but it is. So it's like a Band-Aid for something, but then it's not a good Band-Aid. It's like a Band-Aid that causes a blister somewhere else. So that's what I really dislike about it. Is that we're not actually fixing the problem, and we're not even giving the user accurate information. We're giving them. They're really saying you might have a problem here. It says you have a problem, but it really should say you might have a problem. We don't really know your intention.
So isn't that what we should fix?
Wait, yeah, I'm confused. Wait, so I thought, I'm confused about the whole package.json thing, because the package.json thing, you're using like a plugin to load the package.json. So to me, I don't think we need to error in that case if like the plugin name is different. I think it's the case where like essentially the other parts of the URL or the module name don't match.
Yeah, I mean, we could special case stuff, but that I don't know if that's a scalable solution.
But isn't it that? But then aren't we getting to the point where like, fine, there's one case for the user where they like actually want to load the package.json. That's still fine, right? You can load a JSON file with different types if you want to, but if you're loading the same thing twice, because you do this common like you just do my folder / my file, but you really should be doing tilde my folder / my file, or / my folder my file. And if two things do that, it causes an error. That's a super common problem that people do. Actually, I found a Can't Fixture was doing it too when I was like upgrading. I was like, oh, it gave me all these errors. I was like, oh, nice. I found them and I fixed it.
This actually happens. This happens by default on all DoneJS applications because we load CanZone register. CanZone register is like it's a module which sets up kind of the wrapping of all the global stuff. That's what CanZone register does. So we configure that as a config dependency so that it happens as soon as possible, so that no code runs without it being wrapped. And we do that mainly so that you can do stuff like var set timeout equals window.set timeout, like keep local references and stuff.
Yeah.
But then CanZone also requires CanZone register.
This is the same problem that.
But this is. Yeah. I think Ryan's is actually a problem, whereas this one's not a problem. It does load twice, but there's no problem with it loading twice because it's a side effect module. It's not a module where it needs to be a singleton. So that's really the essential problem is that it is okay to load modules more than once in Steel. It's really, I mean, it is okay, but a lot of your code, a lot of the times it's not okay, I guess is the thing. It can be okay, but it's a lot of the time not okay. And we just don't know is the problem. But that's a problem. That's what makes this warning problematic.
Yeah, I guess to me, I would just rather have people like say turn off this type of warnings then.
Now, I can't get behind having false positives on by default. I can't get behind that.
Why?
I would do the opposite because I think it's. We just see so many people. Like I know a project that's not upgraded Steel because of this.
But having false positives at a lower log level is the same. It's just as bad, I think.
Well, I don't know. It's kind of. I mean, I'm not sure. It's not if you word it correctly. I mean, think about like just info. Wait.
So what the other app like? What's the false positive that they have? Like to me, that our stuff wouldn't take care of. Like CanZone, we obviously can take care of
package.json.
They're loading their package.json.
No, I don't think special casing CanZone. We can't fix the CanZone thing without special casing it.
I'm saying I would say it's okay to say like ignore it for this, right? I think it's okay like.
For this, like if it has the word CanZone register in it, ignore it.
Like you can configure it in your app to say which messages you don't want to see.
We can configure packages to certain modules to not throw this and not complain. Like you can configure away the warning, or we can allow people to say like, okay, wait, so CanZone register, you do want to load it twice, or just I would imagine that was stateful.
We don't care if it loads twice. There's no downside to it loading twice.
Well, wouldn't you want it to load only once? Isn't that like kind of does it get built twice then?
Yeah, I can't think of any way to make it not load twice.
So that's what I was talking about in the issue with Ryan, is what we could have is like another addressing kind of, like URL kind of semantic that would say like, do not follow NPM's addressing.
Yeah,
I'm gonna follow.
Yeah, that makes your code not portable, which CanZone has to run in Node. That makes your code tied to Steel.
But what's importing CanZone? CanZone wouldn't have to have that. I'm saying the things importing CanZone would have to use that.
I don't understand. It's CanZone register is the module. CanZone imports CanZone register itself, and then it's also imported in the config dependency.
Okay, so CanZone. Okay, that's an interesting case. I have to think about that. That's not what I was thinking. What I was thinking for the stuff for like Ryan's example, which is kind of similar, is he has something like some node modules, foo.js, right? And he wants to load that as a config dependency, or maybe it's like package.json, like a foo package.json, because he uses it like for semantic UI or something like that. But he wants to like set up all of this configuration based on semantic UI, so other things are easier. So he has like as a config dependency, he like requires that. But then for some reason, I can't remember why, he wants to later, like in his application, require foo package.json. And what I was saying was, if you really wanted to do that, what you really don't want to do is load the same thing twice, right? I mean, that's not great to have the same thing built twice in the application. It'd be nice if we just had like a URL semantic that was like, not, I mean, this is not what I would actually recommend, but not NPM. And then it's just going to load this, it's going to bypass all the NPM module resolution stuff. And then it would find the same package then.
Yeah, I mean to me that's a separate issue. It's like how can you avoid this is a case, I believe, where the person is loading something twice when they shouldn't, or when they don't want to, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's something we should solve, but that's different from the issue of like, what do we do about these false positive warnings?
So what are the false positives still? Like
CanZone register for every single DoneJS app that's created.
Why do you want that loaded twice? I still don't understand why you want it loaded twice.
It has to be loaded before everything else, so it has to be. It's a super dependency. And then
but then why do you want it loaded again though later? Why can't you just get the same?
Because then CanZone wouldn't work unless you had previously imported CanZone register yourself.
No, but I mean,
CanZone depends on CanZone register, is why CanZone depends.
Yeah, of course. But why can't it just load the one that was loaded before? I mean, I know you're going to make CanZone register. I know the.
I don't know how. That's why I don't know how to make it.
If you had this, you could do that.
If I had what? No, because it's not portable. It doesn't work.
Yeah, it's not portable. So, but that's the issue. But it's not really that you don't want it. It's the portability is the problem.
Yeah,
not the. It's the portability is the problem, not that you want it actually loaded twice.
I don't care if it's loaded twice. It needs to be loaded at least once. It can be loaded as many times as
it can be, but
it doesn't hurt anything.
But the portability is the real. I mean, to me, it would if you have to build your whole app. And this, I mean, if this was rather big and you had to have 2 of them built in your production file, that's not ideal. It's better if it loads just once.
Yeah, it's better.
And to me, the problem with it loading once is just the portability. The real, to me, at least listening to you, to me, the real issue sounds like portability.
For CanZone, yeah, CanZone runs in Node, sure. The other cases like that we know of is like if someone requires their own package JSON.
But then that again, I think that's different because then you do package.json. You're loading it with the JSON plugin, and you're not doing require package JSON.
You're not using a plugin there. You're just require package JSON.
Yeah, but we put the JSON there essentially.
No, we don't. There's not a JSON plugin.
Okay, sure. There's not, but there is for the other one though.
Yes.
Okay, so to me, those are two different things. You're loading those in different, clearly
it is.
labeled different contexts. So then it's okay. We shouldn't throw a warning there. We can avoid that.
How?
Just check the module that's used to require the file, and if it's the plugin part is different, then you're like, okay, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I'm not confident that we can find all of these. I don't have the confidence that we can find all of these and come up with adequate solutions for them. Like again, the underlying problem is that you're allowed to load the same file more than one time in still applications.
But generally speaking,
that's a feature of still.
But generally speaking, you're doing something wrong if you're doing it, right? So that's why just that with that thought in mind, that's why, and my experience of like debugging this with somebody is why I would rather err on the side of like, especially if we can close out some of these common but acceptable cases, I would rather err on the side of letting people know and allow them to configure. You know, if really you wanted this loaded twice, you could just configure like, you know, has loaded multiple times. Like, I mean, it's not great, but I don't know. It just depends on like who you're trying to.
Yeah, I think false positive messages like that's. I think they're really they hurt confidence in the warnings, and people start to, you know, it's a boy that cried sheep situation is what it causes. I mean, I know a lot of those. Like everyone ignores those in CanJS. Those scope warnings. It's like I'm not able to find this thing just because so often it's not actually a problem, you know.
Yes, and we've done. I mean, hopefully with.
So I'm cool with leaving it in as long as we can like fix. If we come up with actual solutions for all the scenarios. Maybe the plugin one's okay. We need a solution for CanZone register though. So what I think is we should merge my PR as it is now, do a release, and then
it's like a huge step backwards. Like I don't know.
I don't think it's a huge step backwards and have to set a log level.
Because I see people start, like I saw someone at Bitovi just start an application like 2-3 days ago where they were just requiring like path to file.
I know.
And that's wrong.
It is wrong.
So this is something that like everybody does when they're first starting an application. This is the kind of stuff people do at like the end and they're mature in their like development. I feel like it's really weird to like let people go on this path in the beginning. You know, it's like the beginning to me matters in some ways more than like the end. If someone is sophisticated enough to like start doing something like this or whatever, like they're doing something like this, they can find this and do this. But the person at the very beginning is going to run into problems doing this. That's, I don't know. I have a lot of hesitation, but I feel like we've debated our points. Now let's put it to Kevin and Chasen. What do you two think? Well,
let me just say one final thing is every single DoneJS app that's created has a false positive warning by default today. So whatever possible way it is to fix this, like we can fix it. We can always change it back. I think the correct thing to do is until we actually have solutions, don't show false positives. Okay, I'm done. Closing argument.
I agree, but I don't know that putting it in a lower log level is the solution. Maybe it would be more useful if we just stored that data somewhere that you could go and look for. But
hold on. Let me just rephrase this, right? So there's A, which what I would say is like just fix the situations, like leave the log, right? There's B, like change the log level change the log level, maybe fix situations later. Okay, is there another one that you're?
I'm proposing C, yeah.
Okay.
Store the information somewhere, maybe fix later. My problem is if you put it at a lower log level and you think you maybe have this problem, you have to go into your app, change the log level, and then reload everything. And assume that you can get back to the spot where you think you had the problem.
Yeah, I also agree with that.
Wait, what? What are you suggesting?
I'm saying like maybe put this information on trace data or some other place within system that you can look. If you think you've run into this problem, you can go in the console and find it without having to go and modify your code and then reload and then navigate through your app to the place where you think you had the problem.
No one will, but no one will find that. Like no one will. No, I don't see a difference there between that and B.
Changing your log level is just changing your script tag to say log level equals 0. That's it. That's all.
Yeah.
That's all you
I
got.
don't see that.
I think yeah.
Versus somewhere else. Like users do not know this stuff.
Yeah, I think the problem with the log level is that if you run into that issue, I don't think you're gonna know to change the log level. Like, I don't know that we're gonna be able to train people that if you run into any kind of issue, the first thing you should do is change the log level to see if you get additional information.
Well, I think that's because we don't log very much stuff now. Like we don't like we just started adding warnings. There's like 3 of them, and I feel like the more we have logging, the more we will be able to train people to have different log levels and to adjust them as they need to.
Personally, I think log levels are a bad. I just generally don't think log levels are a good thing in general. I think it's like log. You need log types are much better. That's maybe a minor difference, but then log types to me, that's this thing. But I would keep this as a you have to turn off log type, not a you have to turn on log type.
I'll just throw something out there. When I do development with React Native, you get a ton of warnings and log errors all the time. And there's not really a concept of log levels, but what you can do is you can pass basically like a blacklist of the prefixes or rejects for particular messages and silence those.
It's like the debug package.
Yeah, so saying log types.
Yeah, but I don't know. Well, I didn't know what you meant by types. Like, I thought you meant like categorizing different logs.
I thought you meant like
but this
warn
is like
info.
just looking at the messages, like the actual text of the message.
Yeah, no, I meant like we have. I meant like yeah, they have like a specific name that you can more easily, like, you know, this would be if we printed this, whatever. It's like, you know, there's well-defined names for every type of warning that we're going to give, and that it's easy to like, you know, provide that same name to say don't log this. So you could say like has multiple times, and then it would be able to filter that out, all of that kind. And yeah, the regex would work as well. More or less, I think what I was.
By the way, Justin, your options there are definitely skewed towards your preferred one, because you say fix the situations, but in my case you say maybe fix the situations.
Well, I'm just using human.
They're both maybe fix the situations.
Well, because you didn't actually.
He's just saying that in A we might not be able to fix the situations.
Oh, we can fix all the known situations.
Well, then change B to fix the situations if we can fix.
So then let's just fix the situations and then
no,
debate this again.
We have to have solutions to fix them. We have to have solutions.
We do. Which ones don't we have solutions for?
CanDom.
Can we just have the configuration for that?
What's the?
We just have some type of configuration that will say like, okay, well.
No, because that's the user has to like configure their app not to show false positives. I don't agree with that.
But isn't that what we just talked about? These log types or whatever, you know. React Native throws a huge amount of logs, and you can just hide some of them.
But there aren't some hidden by default. Probably, maybe there are. I don't know, but.
Huh?
I don't know. Are they good warnings or are they bad warnings? I don't know anything about those warnings. This is a bad warning that we're talking about.
It's a great warning. It is a
warning when it shows up by default in any DoneJS application right now and any new ones. Like that's what makes it a bad warning.
Yeah.
But that we can work around. I mean, to me, if it's just a problem, like there's one little problem with CanZone, we can fix it, like, and no problem, right?
Maybe. I don't have a solution.
I mean,
duplicate CanZone register and we'll just load that as a config dependency.
What's that?
Make a separate module, duplicate CanZone/register, load that one as a config dependency, leave CanZone loading CanZone register.
CanZone still depends on.
So,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Two different modules.
There you go. Yeah, cut and paste. Great. I mean, that's what's happening anyways in reality, is that it is loading and would be built in twice.
Anyway, I think we should try to fix them and then talk about this again.
I think I agree with that. Leaving the log logger.
I'm working on this problem now and not doing anything else until it's fixed. Is everyone okay with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with it.
Okay. All right.
I'll be happy to copy and paste CanZone register if you need help with that.
I mean, I think that's reasonable then, like, because at least for me, at least if we go through the effort of trying to like do this before we hide this error that I think is so critical, like, oh, I mean, then maybe there's another solution out there. Maybe.
Well, this is going to come up. I mean, my fear is that there will be more cases.
Wait. Could we do another case, which is just like, really the problem seems config dependencies. Could we just like, hey, if this was loaded during config dependency time, all bets are off? Could we just do it once like application code has started?
Yeah, we could do that. It would.
That would solve all of these problems.
It wouldn't solve the plugin problem, would it?
Sure. Yeah, because those are package.json is loaded during.
Oh, so you're saying after the config is loaded then?
Yeah, maybe you can turn it on. Maybe we wouldn't solve all of it because now that we progressively import package.json, it's a little bit weirder, right? You might want to like special case those.
We don't like package.json bang npm is loaded. Yeah. That's not progressive.
Okay, so yeah, as long as you have the bang and not bang kind of thing, and plus just anything pre-config dependencies, like fine, it's Wild West. Go do what you want.
How would you exclude those? Because isn't it like the time when you're loading it after, later on, is the second time.
Can mark
That's
all
when the
of
warning
those.
gets shown.
No, but
no,
when
it just still knows. Just the warning would just not do it. The warning would just.
So you hit the
flag or something.
Flag all the previous imports or whatever. Okay.
Yeah, we just mark them as like anything that's imported during config time is kind of like marked in this registry a little bit differently than things that post config time.
Yeah, that's probably reasonable.
I'm pretty proud of what just happened there. It's like we took a step back and then we figured out a reasonable approach for it. That was good of us. We all deserve a virtual pat on the back. Go team. Cool. All right. I think we're way over time.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys, for demoing and talking through the survey results and topics. Everyone who's made it this far, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe, and we'll be back in 2 weeks. See you guys then.
See y'all.
Bye.